I'll hit your mic. Welcome to Urban Renal Talk with Tamika and Steve. What's going on, Tamika? What's going on?
Already, Steve? Okay. Hello, everyone. Good morning. I wish I could just do this all over. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Urban Renal Talk with Tamika
and Steve. What's going on, Tamika? It must have been one of those days.
Listen, I could have swore I hit the unmute button, and I'm like, yeah, I'm on point this week. Let me tell you. Well,
yeah, how's it going? How you like the new intro?
It was cool. I was looking at it. I kind of got stuck there. It's nice.
Yeah,
I kind of got stuck there.
Yeah.
Jared.
Yeah, we got to thank Jared A. Brown for that.
Yes. Thank you, Jared,
awesome.
for the introduction.
Hey, Tamika.
If anyone needs any Jared, yes.
Yeah, and it looks like we having some connection issue, but let me tell you, this Monday I'm getting Verizon, so I'm going to have a separate Ethernet that I'm going to use be direct wire, so the connection will be a lot more solid.
Okay. And I'll have my husband looking. So yes, Steve. How are you? Before we get started with this guest, I'm super excited.
Yeah, I'm pretty good, Tamika. Just trying to take it one day at a time. I finally got my appointment scheduled for my independent medical evaluation. For the insurance side. So this case is coming to a wrap. Yeah. Once I get that done, the court case is the 29th. And hopefully we'll be done with all that. And I can move on with my life and do what we need to do.
Just speak it into existence that it will be. I said, just speak it into existence that it will be done, and you could move forward with your life.
Oh, absolutely. So, Tamika, I know you've been hitting a home run with the international guest. So I finally I think I hit a home run tonight with
you always hit a home run.
Without guests. This Dr. Rowe reached out to me about several weeks ago, and he saw what we were doing, and he wanted to contribute by sharing his story and talking about his book, Learn the Facts About Kidney Disease. And let me tell you, Tamika, I had an opportunity to go through this guide, and I'm going to tell you, it's a self-help guide to better kidney health with proven therapies. And for someone who's in one of the stages of kidney disease that's not already started dialysis and that may have diabetes or hypertension, he goes into detail how you can possibly decrease the time that you go on dialysis. He can, So we're going to talk to Dr. Rowe about that. But Tamika, he's an author. Again, his book, Learn the Facts About Kidney Disease, a self-help guide to better kidney health with proven therapies. He's out of Edisto Beach, South Carolina.
Yeah.
This is what they're saying about him on the back of his book. This book is a must-read for the almost 10% of the world's population who are labeled as suffering from chronic kidney disease. Then Dr. Hugh Rayner, consultant nephrologist, says, not surprisingly, being told you have a kidney disease can be frightening and confusing. Dr. Rosansky's lifetime of experience helping patients with kidney disease has gone into this excellent book. Dr. Rowe isn't afraid to challenge the status quo. So he's one of the nephrologists that challenges the status quo. All right. And when he thinks patients are getting a bad deal.
Right.
And then we have Richard Glassock, MD. He says this book is chock full of information and advice written in easily understandable language. Dr. Rowe's pearls are a highlight. So let's bring on this guest because we have a host of people waiting to hear from Dr. Rowe. So Tamika, let's give them the special guest intro. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Steven Rockowski, aka Dr. Rowe. How you doing?
Welcome.
I love your intro. It's really I could be on a Johnny Carson show. This is
Oh, now you deserve it. You deserve it. How's it going this evening, Dr. Rowe?
I'm doing great. Doing great. Just
Dr. Rowe, how long have you been practicing nephrology?
I practiced for 40 years, and I've retired. I do some volunteer work at the Free Clinic in Columbia, South Carolina. But I spent 40 years working with my patients at the VA hospital in Columbia, South Carolina, where I started the dialysis unit, started the kidney program in South Carolina.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah. So that's
Dr. Rowe, what made you write this book? Like, I haven't received the book yet, but I feel like from what Steve have told me about the book, that this book can help so many patients.
Well, okay. So the original reason for writing the book was I've done a lot of original research. I've published extensively, especially on the topic of when patients should start dialysis. And one of my colleagues who commented on the back of the book, a guy named Bill Clark from Canada, he gave a talk at one of the national meetings, and his talk was just great. And he turned me on to something that I was concerned about for many years, that people were starting dialysis way, way too early. And so I did some original research. I had some very high profile articles, and one of my articles, which was what they call an observational study of about 88,000 patients who were started on dialysis in the US. And my study was voted #1 game changer in nephrology in 2011. And basically what it showed was that starting dialysis at a lower level of kidney function is the way to survive the longest. And unfortunately, between the mid-90s and 2010, patients were being started on dialysis at progressively higher levels of kidney function. So I would give these talks around the world, actually, to my colleagues. And I just felt that the best way to get something done for the patients is to let the patients know about the issue of the best time to start dialysis. And then another thing that got me to write the book is I've got so many folks coming up to me and saying, oh my goodness, I've got a Egfr 60 or 50, and they're really, really worried about it. And it turns out for most of them, they don't have to worry. And if you get on the internet and look for information about CKD, a lot of it is just not right. It doesn't give the true picture. The fact of the matter is that the majority of folks with the early stages of CKD, I'm talking about 1, 2, 3, and even 4, which is kidney function, let's say above 30 Egfr, the vast majority of those folks will never face a dialysis decision. And if you got one of those numbers and you've been given that diagnosis by your GP or your nephrologist, you might want to go look for a book. And if you go look for a book, the books that are published are all pushing the same thing: low protein diet. The most widely sold book on Amazon for patients, not by a doctor, also promotes low protein diet. And this particular author also has a protein supplement to go along with the low protein diet, and very low protein diet. I'm talking about 20, 30 grams protein. This is definitely not indicated for people with just run-of-the-mill stage 3, stage 4, stage 2 CKD. The only people, and it's contraindicated in diabetics, because diabetics can be harmed with hypoglycemia by getting on very low protein diet. So I wanted to present, and there's lots of other books, even books by physicians, and they all pretty much do the same thing. They promote low protein diets. They promote alternative therapies. And I just felt it was my obligation to try to get information explained in simple terms about the stages of kidney disease, what you can do to slow progression of kidney disease, what you can do to possibly reverse a decline of kidney function. And my book goes into, general things for everybody, no matter what your level. And it goes on to people with more moderate levels. And then I go to the end of the book on folks who have to decide on a form of end-stage therapy, transplant or dialysis. So I've got that very well covered. And I also cover in detail the issue of the best time to start dialysis. And I also give ways to predict who might be subject to that decision. I give means to actually calculate that with your physician, with your kidney specialist. And by the way,
now, Dr. Rowe,
Yeah, what I was going to say is the last comment by Dr. Glassick, who actually, Steve, I am so thrilled that my colleagues have given me such really amazing feedback. I mean, they think this book is great, which makes me feel really good. And a lot of patients have told me the same thing. But the last guy was commenting on the way I organized the book. And here's what I decided to do. I don't know if you guys know about Cliff Notes. When I went to school, people wouldn't read their classics. They would read the Cliff Notes, take the test.
Yeah, I had that in college.
And so what I decided to do was have what they call Dr. Rowe's Pearls. This is the last chapter, which is a summary of the highlights of each chapter. So if you don't want to read the whole book, you can go to the last chapter, then you could dig into, each of the chapters. And he liked that.
Let me ask you, why isn't there more nephrologists that take the same position you do on kidney disease? Talk about that.
Okay, so let's put it this way. I have colleagues that have told me how much they appreciate my research, and they've told me stories, which I have my own personal stories, of patients who they followed with EGFRs of around 5 or 5 to 10, or even sometimes even less than 5. And they didn't have an indication to go on dialysis, and people did well for a long time. And I've got a lot of colleagues that appreciate some of the fear that the stages of kidney disease have created. And I have colleagues that point out the fact that, if you are, let's say 70, half of 70-year-olds are going to have so-called stage 3 CKD. Is that normal kidney function for your age? And for the most part, one of the important things for older folks to know is that in general, your kidney function does not decline rapidly. I mean, if you're a younger patient and your kidney function is declining rapidly, that's a whole different situation.
Right. Now, it's funny that you just said that, because that leads me to the next question. And you just pretty much mentioned in your book, in general, the older you are, the slower the loss of your kidney function. Elaborate on that sense. According to the American Kidney Fund, they state that being over 60 increases your risk for kidney disease. People age 60 or over are also more likely to have diabetes and hypertension, but you're saying the opposite. Elaborate on that.
Okay, well, I'm not saying totally the opposite. Certainly, as you get older, you get more comorbidities, which are things like diabetes, high blood pressure. You develop heart disease. You could develop cancer. Okay, that's for sure. Now, the question about what is a normal level of kidney function, there's still a lot of debate, and whether we should call patients who are, let's say, in their 70s or 80s and have an eGFR number somewhere in the 50 or 60 range, we should even call them having kidney disease. Now, I think the biggest misconception is why these stages were even created. People have lost the whole issue of why this was done. And it's a simple proposition. It's like hypertension or diabetes. CKD is a risk factor for atherosclerosis. And atherosclerosis, of course, produces bad things like heart attacks and strokes, peripheral vascular disease, amputations, that kind of stuff. So CKD increases your risk of atherosclerosis. And my book goes into a lot of detail on lifestyle changes that you need to do, which are the most important thing if you've got CKD, to decrease these risks. It's not, for most people, it's not a question of, oh my goodness, I got to get ready to go on a machine or get a transplant. That's just not the case. And the part of the problem, which is something that's really disturbed me, is that older folks have been put on dialysis with eGFRs of 15 or more. To me, this is really a terrible thing to do to an old person. And some of these old folks, who in my opinion didn't need to start dialysis, could have avoided having access surgeries. I mean, my poster child is a 90-year-old African-American veteran who came to see me at the VA with 4 access surgeries. And he didn't need dialysis. He didn't need it. I looked at his data for the prior year or two, and he was roughly around that same level of kidney function. And I said, Mr. So-and-so, you don't need dialysis. He didn't believe it, but I followed him for a year and he did fine. So this is the kind of thing that I think is still happening. And even though my research and research of my other colleagues, not just me, even though we've shown that there's no advantage for folks in general, I mean, there are exceptions, of course, and every patient's dialysis decision has to be individualized. Mm-hmm. But for so many of these folks, they didn't need to start. And they may have died of a non-kidney issue if they would ever, had access surgery or put on dialysis. So that's one of the groups of patients that I'm most interested in trying to help. But I'm interested in helping so many other folks that worry so much about whether their CKD is going to cause them to have to go on dialysis.
Let me ask you one more question, Tamika. I know you got some questions, but let me just one more question I need to ask. I mean, I have a lot. I got it, but you said something very interesting that I think people should know who may be watching this broadcast that has diabetes, hypertension, and may be classified as in one of those 5 stages other than the end stage. But you say in chapter 4, reverse declines in kidney function. Now, you mentioned dehydration is the most common reasons patients with CKD have a temporary worsening of kidney function. Talk about that, because if that's the case, maybe some patients who go to the hospital, could they be getting misdiagnosed because of that, right there, because of that statement? Okay, so dehydration is the commonest cause of reversible declines of kidney function. Dehydration can occur in dehydration or decrease in blood pressure. So dehydration obviously can occur if you get sick, if you're vomiting, if you have diarrhea,
if you can't have enough fluid intake, if you have extreme heat and so forth. So if you already have a decline of your kidney function, you may go from an EGFR of 40 to 20 with dehydration very easily, but it's reversible. And in some cases, let's say you had an EGFR of 20 and now you went down to 10. So, and that could be because you got sick, your blood pressure was too low, you got dehydrated, you were having fevers, you were having diarrhea, you're having vomiting, could be many different things. And you go into the hospital, and some folks with this temporary decline of kidney function can even get started on dialysis. So I think that people need to be aware of the possibility that their decline in kidney function is reversible, and they need to be asking their kidney doctor, if they have a decline of kidney function, is my decline reversible? And if a doctor, a kidney specialist, wants to start a patient on dialysis when they've got a decline of their baseline kidney function, and often it'll be due to some factor related to your hospitalization, you have fever, you got pneumonia, something else, if this kidney function decline could get better without dialysis. And even beyond that, some folks go on dialysis with a reversible decline of kidney function. And it's not a standard practice to look for recovery of kidney function once you go on dialysis. And that's another thing I talk about in my book, that anyone who does go on dialysis, especially if they came from a state of not being end stage. I mean, if you were already 5 to 10 for a year or two on EGFR, that's a whole different story. But if you were 20 and now you're 10, and your doctor wants to put you on dialysis because your EGFR went to 20 or down to 10, you need to be aware of this possibility and question your doctor about the possibility.
Wow. And that's, Tamika, I think that's where the disconnect, especially down south, it's hot down there. And I mean, I'm sure that dehydration can get misconstrued. Tamika, what do you think about this? You, your mic, hit your mic.
I'm sorry. I'm literally on Amazon about to hit add to cart and purchase this book. I was reading the reviews and I wanted to know about the SMART diet.
Okay.
Could you talk some more on?
Yeah. Okay. So
your question. I'm sorry, Steve. I was reading the reviews and I'm
just messing with you. I'm just messing with you.
Let me get this book.
All right. Let me try to stop laughing here because you guys are funny. Okay. All right.
That's
okay. So here, let me back up. This is kind of interesting. So I'm writing this book, and I've got a lot to say about when to start dialysis, the stages of kidney disease, all the usual things that happen to kidney disease, the things that can decrease your atherosclerosis risk, like exercise, diet, control the blood pressure, and all these other lifestyle issues. And then I looked at all the other books out there. They spend a lot of time on diet. And that's what everybody's interested in, and they should be, because diet is important.
Right.
And so I call it my SMART diet for CKD. I made up the name of it. Mm-hmm. We could call it Dr. Rowe's diet. I mean, why is it the SMART diet? Because it has so many benefits. I mean, there is no need for extremely low protein diets, and they may be dangerous. But a relatively low protein diet that's high in fruits and vegetables and low in processed foods and low in saturated fats and high in these unrefined foods, none of these, refined grains. You want to eat whole grains. You want to eat lots of color plants and vegetables, and that will have all kinds of benefits. It could not only, it actually has been shown the one thing for your family that you can help if you've got a family that's prone genetically by heredity to get kidney disease. If you eat a plant-based diet, doesn't have to be vegetarian or vegan, but you stay away from red meat and have limited amounts of meat and more fish and high fiber, you can actually prevent kidney disease in your family. And you can also, with that diet, help slow your own progression of kidney disease. And it has all kinds of other benefits. It will decrease irritable bowel syndrome, colon cancer. It could decrease your diabetes risk, your blood pressure problems, and it can also help with problems that come with advancing kidney disease, like acid buildup. So this kind of smart diet has all kinds of benefits. And it doesn't have to be extremely low in protein, and it doesn't have to have any exotic supplements, which may be necessary if you're on extremely low protein diets. You know, there's certainly a reason to not be obese, because obese is a risk factor. And I think people get hung up with calories, and you don't have to worry so much about calories. Most important thing is to try to limit the amount we take in, because we have massive caloric intake in this country. Limit the processed foods, limit the fast foods, and that's probably the thing that will be the most beneficial to your overall health and your kidney health.
So why don't you they speak more about this? Like, I still work in the field, and you don't hear any talk about changing to a plant-based diet or anything like that. The only time I hear it is when I tell them out of my mouth, when I sit down and, you know, talk to them about, you know, changing the way they eat, changing their lifestyle.
Unfortunately, nephrologists don't, or doctors in general, we don't get a lot of education about nutrition. I actually had to self-educate myself to be able to produce the chapter on the smart diet and to talk intelligently about these issues. And as I researched it and explored it, I found out more and more how beneficial that kind of diet is for the risk of atherosclerotic problems like heart attacks, strokes, the risk of high blood pressure, diabetes. All of these things can be benefited by a plant-based diet high in fiber and low in these, you know, pizzas, fast foods, chips, you know, snack foods. I mean, that's something that can add years to your life. Yeah. And of course, no smoking. That's the biggest risk factor. Mm-hmm. So, you know, as a CKD patient, you're at risk for atherosclerosis. So you need to look at all of the lifestyle risk factor issues and get control of them. Relaxation, stop smoking, the right range of blood pressure. That's a whole other topic. Not too high, but not too low. A lot of people overtreat their blood pressure, which can harm your kidneys. That's another cause of reversible decline in kidney function. Too much blood pressure medicine. I can't tell you how many times, including yours truly, that I've overtreated myself, and my friends have overtreated themselves with blood pressure medicine. Another important message is, if you're a hypertensive patient, you're on drugs for your blood pressure. If you're feeling weak or dizzy, don't take your medicine. Check your blood pressure. And if your blood pressure is running in the 90-100 range, hold that medicine. You could save yourself from getting acute kidney failure, a big decline in your kidney function, and even a stroke, and even a heart attack. Okay.
Wow.
So yeah. So
hey, Dr. Rowe.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, talk about, because we have a lot of kidney patients out there that has polycystic kidney disease. Talk about the drug called Tolvaptan and how is it beneficial for people who may have polycystic kidney disease and that's not on dialysis.
I have to say that I'm excited that there is a drug that may be beneficial. I say maybe because I personally have been involved in the topic of trying to see what can affect the decline of kidney function. I published a few articles on that. And it turns out that the drug that's being used is a drug that I studied early on for patients with hyponatremia. The drug may be beneficial, but it could also be harmful. It's a drug that needs to be closely followed for any patient with polycystic kidney disease. And I think it's still not being recommended for patients who have EGFRs of less than 30. The biggest issue in my mind is, okay, one of the things that I talk about in my book, it's not your number at today. Let's say today it's 40, tomorrow maybe 50, next day maybe 45, or the next month or 6 months from now. So you need to know the trend of your kidney function over months and years. Now, like with any other kind of CKD, whether it's diabetic or hypertensive or glomerular diseases, if you have high levels of protein in your urine, those are the folks that lose kidney function more rapidly. Polycystic kidney disease patients generally do not have high levels of urine protein. And frankly, Steve, I'm not that convinced that patients are necessarily going to benefit if they're one of the lucky patients with polycystic kidney disease that's not losing kidney function rapidly. If you're losing kidney function rapidly, it's more easily to demonstrate an effect of any intervention. But you have to prove to me that you're one of these patients who's at risk for losing kidney function quickly. And not everybody with polycystic is at that risk. I'm glad there's a treatment. I think it's certainly indicated in some of the polycystic patients, but it's a complicated story. I wouldn't say it's for everybody.
Wow. You also mentioned in your book that was very interesting. You say your kidney function number for most patients should not be serious a concern. Now, why shouldn't that kidney function number for most patients be a concern?
Should not be a concern, you mean?
Right.
Okay, so let me tell you where I'm coming from. I mean, look, medicine's a business, and there's lots of entities that are involved with the kidney business, especially entities connected to dialysis. And if you go on their websites, they have a lot of nonsense. Like, you've got stage 3 or stage 4, you're going to have these symptoms. As you say in the beginning of your program, kidney disease is silent. You don't have any symptoms. I can't tell you how many patients didn't know they had advanced end-stage kidney disease and just showed up with it. So, yeah, you may be one of those rare patients. Like, I had a patient who was a young fellow who worked at the VA who almost died. I mean, he came in, didn't know he had kidney disease, had a creatinine of 22, an EGFR probably 1 or 2, and that's a long story to talk about him, but he didn't know he had kidney failure. So that's so rare. But everyone who goes to a GP or an internist, they're going to get their kidney number. And what I'm trying to say is, for most people, that kidney number is not something to lock onto, because it moves around a lot and it's not an accurate number. That number is plus or minus 20%. So if it's 2, it could be plus or minus 2.2. It could be 1.8 to 2.2. I'm sorry. If you're, I'm talking about creatinine. If your EGFR is 50, it could easily be plus or minus 5 or plus or minus 10. It could be 40 to 60, right? So the number is not something for anyone to get attached to. It's your trend in your kidney function numbers over time that really matters. And again, the biggest factor that relates to a more rapid decline is if you've got 2 to 3 plus protein in your urine.
Right. Now, let me ask you, can you apply that same principle to someone who's had a transplant?
No, transplants are a whole different world.
Okay.
I mean, if you've got a kidney transplant, you're in a whole different category. We're talking about people that are having either age-related or some other issue related to an abnormality of their kidney function number. The vast majority of folks that are diagnosed every day on their lab reports are not folks with serious kidney problems. If you've got a transplant, that's a whole different world. And those folks, I get very concerned about change of their kidney function, because we got to figure out, do they need more or less immunosuppression? It's a whole different game. So they don't fit. They don't fit into this at all. Whole different world.
Right. I had a question from Jared A. Brown. He's one of our hosts on Warriors Quest. He wanted to know, this is verbatim, he would like to know in your own words how living donors have a risk donating a kidney.
Okay, this is still an open question. And I would not discourage anyone from considering giving a kidney. I think there's a so for example, if you are someone in your 60s or 70s and one of your children wants to donate a kidney, and the donor is, let's say, in their 20s or 30s, there is a possibility that donating a kidney, and it's not a large possibility, but there is some possibility that donating a kidney would put that young person at risk of a future kidney issue. Not a big risk, but there is some risk. On the other hand, if the donors are 30s, 40s, and 50s, I don't have any of those kind of reservations. But if you have a young donor, you need to at least consider that as a possibility.
Wait a minute. Why is that for an older person you wouldn't worry, but for a younger person you would have some concern?
Because some of it could be a younger person may be at risk genetically, and it hasn't manifested itself yet. By the time someone's in their 40s, 50s, or 60s, if they've got some kind of genetic clock going that's going to do something weird to them regarding their kidneys, it would have happened. Okay. But if somebody's, let's say between 15 and 30, just rough numbers, right? We don't know. We don't know if something is cooking there. And so that would be a little bit of a concern. Not a huge concern, but if I were in that position that I had to decide whether to take a kidney from a 15 to 30-year-old, related donor, child, relative, I would give it a little more thought, but I wouldn't exclude it, just to be a little bit more cognizant of a possible issue.
Very interesting, because I just know someone, a mother on Facebook just received a kidney from her son.
I mean, it's a wonderful thing to do. There's no question. People who have donated kidneys feel really great about it, especially when you have a great outcome. And listen, Steve, there's no question that your survival is markedly increased if you're a transplant recipient versus someone who has to be on dialysis the rest of your life. No comparison to the longevity, the survival. It's a very big difference. So if you can possibly be lucky enough to get a kidney transplant, certainly it's the way to go. And the best way to go, absolute best way to go, is preemptive. You know what preemptive kidney transplant means?
Sure, absolutely.
It means getting a kidney before you ever go on dialysis, before you even get an access. That's the goal. That's golden.
Right.
That's
in fact, in your book, you say somewhere around 30 to 20, you should start looking.
Okay, so here's something I learned from a colleague who he's in San Diego, UC San Diego, transplant nephrologist. I think that you can get wait time, listing time, and that's what determines your eligibility to get the next kidney, starting if your EGFR is 20. And they're trying to change the wait time issue to give people that are on dialysis, because a lot of people, only I think 1 out of 5 patients at most who are on dialysis are even considered for transplant. We're not considering enough people for transplants.
Wow.
So yeah, it's just not, we're not doing it enough. And there's new legislation. There's legislation to try to make drugs available beyond 3 years, because unfortunately, the drugs for your immunosuppression, once you get a kidney transplant, current Medicare guidelines don't continue them forever, and they need to be continued forever. Otherwise, you lose your kidney. And
I've seen that happen too.
Yeah. We need to modify our system, and they also have changed it because, and especially in African Americans, they're not getting kidney transplants nearly as much as Caucasians, and nobody's getting enough across the board, but African Americans clearly are not. And so one of the ways to equalize this a little bit and make it more available for you, and especially if it is not as much live-related donors in the African American population. And so what they're doing is they're going to consider all your time on dialysis as wait time. It's not the time you get listed, it's all your time on dialysis, which should help move people up on getting to get the kidney. So there's a lot of debate about all of these issues regarding who gets the next kidney.
Mm-hmm. Now, Dad Vice TV says, he asks, why do you feel we are not considering enough people for transplant?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. This is the data is out there. The data is out there, and there's something called the Kidney Health Initiative. There is, I'm not going to discuss politics, but one of the few things that I could say is positive about the current administration is this thing called the Kidney Health Initiative, because Azar, Secretary of Health and Human Services, I think his family member had kidney disease, so he was connected to it. So they're trying to encourage home dialysis. Totally agree with that. They're trying to get more people in any given facility to be on the transplant wait list. I totally agree with that. And so they're doing the right things. They're moving in the right direction. But there's still a lot of issues. For example, we're not paying for immunosuppression long enough. We discussed that. There's a piece of legislation out right now. It's up right now in Congress to try to not cut this immunosuppression off for 3 years. The other thing that's a massive problem is young African-American males, especially, they have the highest rate of CKD, or African-American females, or just people of color that don't have, anyone who doesn't have adequate health insurance. You can't get the proper follow-up to help slow the decline of your kidney function. And so a lot of people, in order to get insurance, people say, well, I'm going to put you on dialysis because that's the way I can get you insured, because you'll be covered by Medicare, which is absurd. This is our American way. We have a really terrible health insurance situation. It's absolutely
sad.
It really is sad.
Wow.
So that what can we as African, Steven?
Can't hear you.
She having some internet.
To help ourselves with this matter.
You kind of broke up, Tamika. Can you repeat that?
Oh, I was asking what can we do as African American to help this matter? Because I have African American patients. Could it be more outreach? What can be done?
What can be done?
So
Dr.
it's not
Rowe?
so many African American.
Okay. Yeah. So I you know, with the book coming out at the beginning of COVID, I had like a bunch of scheduled talks to be given in churches and so forth. And I recently did give a Zoom talk to something called AME, very big African Methodist Episcopal, massive church organization in the South. And so the South Carolina AME, I talked to the health ministry. And so I didn't spend a lot of time on the issue of race and kidney disease, but clearly there's a lot more CK. Okay, so I mean, African Americans are like 12% of the population. They make up about 30% of the people on dialysis. It's crazy. It's crazy. So why is that? And a lot of people have family history, but the family history is just a small piece of the problem. Most of the problem is related to resources, lack of education, lack of health insurance, lack of proper diet,
lack of resources.
Yes. And you know, high stress, high blood pressure. I mean, and one of the goals, my goals of the book as well, is to help these folks live longer. And a lot of the issues that for all people with CKD are lifestyle issues. And they go for, you know, people that are in the African American population, people that have a lower socioeconomic status. And if we can get these folks educated and give them health insurance and health care, we can decrease these high rates of CKD.
Mm-hmm. Now, Dr. Rowe, let me ask you this question, because I know several people who are right now maybe watching that's like stage 4, hover around quote, quote, stage 5 CKD. But in your book, you mentioned, and I thought this was interesting as well, you say for the small percentage of CKD patients who needed a late start of dialysis may be best. Now, what determines if a CKD patient falls into this category?
Okay. So what are the reasons why people go on dialysis? And what are the justified reasons? First of all, as we talked about, most people are unaware of the fact that the symptoms that you may have when you have a decreased EGFR, certainly if you're 30 to 60, and even if you're 15 to 30, it is unlikely that any of your symptoms are related to that level of CKD. Not impossible, but unlikely. So as your kidney function gets down to, let's say, 15 to 30, then you may get anemic, then you may have trouble with some electrolytes, and certainly it's possible to have some symptomatology there. But there's no reason to start dialysis for a number of your EGFR. And the literature, my study and lots of other studies from around the world have shown that the people that do the best seem to be the ones who start with less than 5. Now, the problem is that a lot of folks that start on dialysis are not necessarily starting because of a low kidney function number and symptoms from their kidney decline. They may often start because they have congestive heart failure. So if you've got a combination of a weak heart and bad kidneys, that's often a rough combination. But here's the thing, a lot of these folks can probably delay even with heart failure, and a lot of them will come in with pulmonary edema, fluid overload, but you can diurese these folks and you can use combinations of diuretics. And what's going to happen with that, and you guys probably know this, is that when you diurese somebody, your EGFR is going to go down because it's another of the dehydration things. That's what drops your EGFR. So, but the reason to start someone on dialysis with heart failure is if you can't control their fluids conservatively. If you can't get them to breathe comfortably and control their heart failure symptoms without with diuretics, if you can't do it with diuretics, then you're stuck. You may have to be on a machine to control your fluid balance.
Right.
But beyond that, it's unusual. Even when I've looked at studies of people in Asia, and they don't start you less than 5. It's and above 5 rather. It is unusual. They shoot for around 5, and certainly 5 to 10, but certainly not above 10, which we do routinely. We start most of our patients above 10, which is too early. And
now, I had a question. Go ahead, sorry. Now go ahead, Dr. Rowe. I'm sorry.
In these countries, and in Japan, there's very few studies that looked at symptomatology before people go on dialysis. And what's the reason why you're going on dialysis? Now, if you can't control your potassium, I'm fine. You can't control it with Kxalate or one of these other potassium binders. You diet, you can't control it, and you're not on a medicine to raise your potassium. That's life-threatening. I mean, I'm fine with that. You can't control your fluids. You can't with aggressive diuretics. Okay, I'm okay with that. But for most other situations, there's really no good indication. One of the things that people were pushed on dialysis for is nutritional deterioration, serum albumin drop, and weight loss. Guess what? Your nutritional parameters get worse on dialysis with time, and you lose the most important thing that you've got, your own residual kidney function. I'm going to back up to the residual kidney function. What I was getting at in Japan, even at levels of kidney function 5 or less, these people rarely had symptoms. And we don't see, I don't know, you guys are young kids, but when I started in this business in the 60s and 70s, we were seeing people that had so-called pericarditis, fluid around the heart.
I remember that.
Yeah, I mean, but it's rare that you're going to get people that are anywhere near that advanced, and they get started way, way too early. And it's not happening like this in the UK or Australia, New Zealand, or in Asia. This is a phenomenon in Europe, Canada, and in the US, starting above 10 EGFR, which is coined early start of dialysis.
Wow. It was the question I was going to ask you, and I lost my thought. But can you talk about the alkali therapy? You mentioned in your book, some research studies suggest that if you raise your blood alkali, you may slow the loss of your kidney function. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. I think it's reasonable, especially, I don't know if your audience is familiar with electrolytes. So when you go to your doctor, you get something called electrolytes. It's called sodium is one, potassium, chloride, and CO2, or the bicarbonate on the electrolyte panel. So with progression of your kidney decline, when you get down below 30, below 20, the acids may build up. And when the acids build up, that CO2 on the electrolyte panel will drop. And if that's in the range of 20 or so, normal, let's say, is 25, is probably not going to hurt, and it may actually benefit some patients with regard to slowing decline of kidney function. There's ongoing research to use a drug that will raise the bicarbonate. I mean, you could take baking soda. I mean, you don't have to take anything fancy. And there's research going on to see whether it will affect people who have earlier stage CKD, not 20 or 30 EGFR, but a little higher. And it may be beneficial, I'm not sure. But it's certainly, if you already have a decline of your CO2 on your electrolyte panel, by all means, I would be totally in favor of using sodium bicarbonate to possibly slow the decline and correct your electrolytes, with the proviso that people with congestive heart failure have to be a little careful of the salt intake and the sodium bicarbonate, the sodium. But otherwise, reasonable thing to consider.
Right. Now, I don't know if you can answer this question, but we had a gentleman, Manny Philibos. He asked, what do you think about wrapping a donor kidney in silicone in order to lessen the immunosuppressant drugs by not having organic tissue touch one another? Is there any type of research or study that talks about this?
I am not a transplant nephrologist, and I will not. I can't comment on that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I have no knowledge of it.
We had Gloria Mungo. She wants to know EGFR labs for African Americans is different from Caucasians. Can you explain why?
So EGFR is an estimated glomerular filtration rate, okay? And it's estimated by an equation. And in the equation, you plug in the age and you plug in the race. Why do we plug in the race? And there's been a lot of debate about this, and I think it's okay to use the equations that adjust for race. And why is that? Because on average, African Americans have more muscle mass per body weight. And so their EGFR needs to be adjusted according to that factor, because, you know, muscle mass is what determines serum creatinine. Serum creatinine is what determines EGFR. And I don't know if you want me to go through, that's a little bit of a complicated story about how EGFR is measured. But what it means is the amount. So the kidney is composed of these little units called glomeruli, and each of these little units filters. And so the amount of filtration in each in all of these millions of units is what gives you the glomerular filtration rate, which is an estimate of kidney function. Now, if you go on the internet, you'll see people trying to promote something that's going to affect your creatinine. But that doesn't affect your kidney function. I mean, there are ways to affect your serum creatinine. And like I said, muscle mass is the primary determinant of serum creatinine. And diet intake will also determine it to some extent. And the other thing is your kidney function. So if you've got someone with the same kidney function, with the same amount of muscle mass, they will have, the same number that you will get on EGFR.
Mm-hmm. We had a question. What is the best time to get on dialysis then?
Never. Okay. In all seriousness, here's what I would tell patients. You really have to talk to your doctor and let their doctor know. You could show them my book. It's well referenced. You could look, I've got a chapter which details at great length all of the debates about starting dialysis too early. If you let your doctor know that you're aware of the literature, that starting people above 10 is early and probably unnecessary, and that, at a minimum, maybe doc, should we wait till 5 to 10 or less than 5? And you may have to start before that. There are going to be situations where, like I said, a patient's doctor cannot control the fluids. They can't control potassium. I mean, there are going to be unusual situations, or somebody who's really got a poor nutrition. They're really doing poorly. They're nauseated, they're vomiting. They can't keep food down. I mean, if that comes in conjunction with a progressively lower kidney function number, I would certainly think you've got a justification to start dialysis. Now, one of the things that's been suggested in the most recent guidelines from the United States, and by the way, we were the first ones that promoted starting dialysis early. It came out of our National Kidney Foundation work group called KDOKI. And they were the first ones to talk about starting over 10, and then the rest of the world went along with it until folks like me and other colleagues showed that that was not beneficial. You know, if you make your doctor aware of the fact that you're aware of the literature that earlier start is probably not going to be beneficial, discuss with them why they want to start. And one of the things that this working group suggested is try conservative management. Try to treat whatever your symptoms are without dialysis first. And if it can't be controlled, whether it's fluid or potassium, you know, whatever the issue is, okay, maybe, or you're just really losing weight, you can't eat, you're vomiting, maybe it's time for me to go on dialysis.
Very interesting. I know your time is kind of tight. We got to have you back, Dr. Rose. Seriously, man, this has turned out to be an awesome, informative show. Your book is awesome, but it's one question. I have a friend. She, her kidney disease was caused by Alport's disease. Now, can you just talk a little bit about Alport's and the people who get kidney disease from that? Is that disease more likely to return if they get a transplant?
I don't know. I can't tell you that I'm real educated in Alport's. I will only tell you this: it's one of the few genetic diseases of the kidney. It's associated with changes in the eye, and you know, some of these folks have trouble with their vision as well as their kidney function. But I'm really not familiar with the current management because it's very, very rare. And frankly, in all my career, I've never had an Alport's patient.
Wow, that's very interesting. Very interesting. Now, again, Mr. Philo Boss, he wants to know, is there a connection between good bacteria and IgA nephropathy?
Yeah, IgA is a very, okay. So first of all, IgA is one of the forms of glomerular disease, okay? The main causes of kidney failure, or at least listed causes, are diabetes, which explains about half the folks that go on dialysis, high blood pressure, probably another 20, 25%. And then glomerular disease used to be a big cause of end-stage kidney failure. Now it's probably more like 10 or 20%. So what is glomerular disease? There's a lot of different forms of these glomerular diseases. IgA is one of them. IgA nephropathy is very common, especially in Asia. And really what it means is it's a descriptive thing. So people that have glomerular diseases, these are diseases where the glomeruli are not working right. They leak protein, and folks have a lot of protein in the urine. And it's proven by biopsy. That's one of the few situations if somebody has a lot of protein in the urine and they don't have diabetic kidney disease, they don't have hypertensive kidney disease, you want to rule out, and there's a lot more workup that's involved. IgA is one of the common forms of these unusual glomerular diseases. The folks with any glomerular disease, the most important factor, and this is like a broken record, is how much protein you have in the urine. And that's what will determine if you've got one of the glomerular diseases that's going to get you to lose your kidney function rapidly. Now, as far as the connection between the gut flora, IgA, I really can't comment. I'm not familiar with that. But sure. IgA nephropathy, like any other kidney disease, but primarily the management has been with immune therapy.
Mm-hmm. Somebody wants to know, you're in South Carolina, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Rowe?
Yeah.
You may have a lot of fans, and you don't practice, you retire from practice. Do you do consults or anything like that? If somebody's seeing you online and they wanted to talk with you on a consultant basis, would that be something you would do?
Well, look, what I've done is since I published my book, I'm trying to let people know that the book is out there. And
Right.
I
So
don't
get the book.
I don't get on Facebook a lot, but I have, and that's how I found you. But I've got my, that book, Learn the Facts About Kidney Disease. I got a Facebook page, and but what I do is I get on these other support group pages, and I'll see if somebody has a question, and I'll make a comment. But I'm not going to do official consultations. So I'll make a comment.
Sure, I hear that.
Yeah, and I'll make a comment and suggest that you get the book. And like I said, the best way to get the best care is to educate yourself and let your doctor know that you're educated about your kidney disease and what your options are, and bring that information to your doctor. That's how you can be sure you're getting the best treatment. And one of the things we didn't discuss tonight, which maybe for another show, is one of the few things, bicarbonate may help. But the things that we know helps is taking the drugs that are called ACEs or ARBs. The ACEs are the prills,
the ARBs,
the TAN, like captopril, losartan. If you got protein in the urine, your doctor should have you on one of these drugs. With some, and even if you especially got 2+ or more protein in the urine, you definitely need to be on one of these drugs, even if they cause a decline, which they can, short term, up to 30% in your kidney function. Longer term, they may benefit you in terms of slowing your likelihood of going on to dialysis or delaying it. Important. That's things that help. The ACEs in protein, people with high protein levels in their urine. Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Rowe, we definitely have to bring you back for another show. You then gave out some great information. I know we ran over our time a little bit, but before we leave, what do you want patients who are dealing with CKD? What's the most important thing you want them to know about your book and about kidney disease?
Well, I think that people should not get hung up with their eGFR number. It's the trend of your number over time, which really matters. And in my book, I talk about the gold standard. This eGFR is just an estimate. And if there's questions about what your kidney number is, whether you've got a low enough number that your kidney symptoms could be caused by this low kidney number, the best thing to do is to get a true measure, which I talk about in the book, of your kidney function, which is called creatinine clearance. It's the old way that we used to measure kidney function. But getting this estimate is a worthwhile thing to follow. But the most important thing for most of you folks is your trend of your kidney function over months and years, not one number. Don't get too hung up on it. And if you happen to be unfortunate enough to have high levels of protein in the urine, you are at risk for a more rapid decline. And these are the folks that should be considering, the drugs that we mentioned, the ACEs and the ARBs. And if they're not diabetic, and if you're a young person, maybe then a very low protein diet should be at least considered. That's the situation where I would at least think about it. But for most folks, very low protein is not indicated, and lifestyle issues are the most important thing you could do. Keep your blood pressure under control, keep your weight under control, your diabetes, and stop smoking, get exercise, and try to do the things that will decrease your risk of atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, which are, the heart attack, strokes, and bad circulation to your legs and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Wow, awesome. Now, Dr. Rowe, let me just ask one more question that I thought about. Can a person have if that has kidney disease, a decrease in urine output and still have a great creatinine clearance?
Okay, urine output is going to be determined by your state of dehydration. If your kidneys are working right and you haven't been taking in enough fluids or you've been sweating a lot, you're going to have a much lower urine output. So the kidneys will react to your fluid intake. Basically, if your kidneys are working properly, what you take in is what you're going to put out. And it turns out even at very low levels of kidney function, this is again, your own kidney function is much more valuable than any machine that has ever been created to replace it. Even very low levels of your kidney function will have a survival benefit for you. So going on dialysis, unfortunately, will lead to a loss of your own kidney function. That's another thing to keep in mind.
Wow.
Yeah. And you don't want to do things that will mess your kidneys up, like, drop your blood pressure too low, get too dehydrated, and so forth. So you want to try to, but there's no need to drink tons of water unless you got kidney stones.
Right.
And if you're on drugs that can hurt your kidneys, stay well hydrated. Another important message.
Right. Now, is that something people should watch out for? Nephrotoxic drugs as well?
Oh yeah. Well, that's for another discussion. But yeah.
Okay.
A lot of things like, NSAIDs and even the ACEs and ARBs, that gets into a more complicated discussion, that could potentially drop EGFR. Stay well hydrated when you're on those kinds of drugs that may affect your kidney.
All right. Yes, Dr. Rosansky, thank you so much for coming on. We definitely welcome you back and would love to have you back. His book, Learn the Facts About Kidney Disease, a self-help guide to better kidney health with proven therapies. This is definitely an awesome book, especially someone that has diabetes, heart disease. Wow. Wait a minute. I got some more questions. Let me see. Okay. I want to feed you this before we go. Somebody wants to know, Manny, do you think there would be an artificial kidney anytime soon?
Well, there's something called the Kidney Health Initiative, and part of that is they have a prize for innovations for kidney disease, and one of the prizes is for the artificial kidney. I think if there's enough brain power and enough money put towards it, I think we will see it. I don't know about my lifetime, probably in your lifetime. I think we will have an artificial kidney.
Wow. And then one more question. Why everything that you talked about tonight, Dr. Rowe, everything that's mentioned in this book that can definitely benefit thousands of people, why isn't it talked about? But yet, it seemed like the status quo was being more reactive of building all these multiple dialysis facilities. Why isn't this talked about so we can decrease people from going on dialysis?
I think you answered your own question. I mean, look, there's clearly financial incentive. I mean, medicine is a business. That's not the only reason. But, I've got well-meaning colleagues, and one of the organizations I mentioned, which is called KDIGO, which is an international organization, and actually the president of the International Kidney Organization gave very high reviews of my book too. And they told me that this is great. Yeah, we want to get this information out there to patients, but they haven't followed up on it. So I can't answer. I mean, the business of nephrology is not about educating patients. It's about taking care of patients.
Right. If you don't mind, we're going to try to help you push this. Just because I think people should invest who are dealing with kidney disease, even maybe their parents, their loved ones. There's no book out there like this that can definitely have you possibly not starting dialysis when other nephrologists may want you to start. You may have some more time left, and getting this book, Learn the Facts About Kidney Disease, will put you in that state of finding out. Dr. Rosansky, thank you so much for coming on Urban Renal Talk with Tamika and Steve, and look forward to bringing you back and talking about something else educational that can help kidney patients deal with this disease.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
All right. I'll see you soon.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. Man, this has been an awesome show. My partner, because of her internet connectivity, she had to sign off. But she would agree with me that this has been one of the most informative shows that we ever done. And we hope if you're dealing with kidney disease, far as one of the stages, we hope that this show has been very beneficial to you to start being more proactive in your care and challenging your kidney doctors of what Dr. Rose said about keeping you on, about starting dialysis. I think I got my partner back to kind of end the show. Hey, Tamika, welcome back.
Hey, thank you, Steve. It was like I had to order the book in the middle of the show. I had to, because with me still working in the field and dealing with patients and they having questions, and to have some better answers.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
No. It was a great show. It was a great show. The information was crazy.
Yeah. Very, as Dad Vice TV said, this info is so helpful. Everyone, yeah, absolutely, guys. Share the video, and if y'all want, and let me just tell you, if you want to see Dr. Rowe again, I'm sure he's going to be on Dad Vice TV. I'm not sure the exact date or time, but be on the watch out for Dad Vice TV Kidney Health Coach. Dr. Rowe will be on his show. And so you'll be able to see him again, ask questions, and get all the great information you need. And Manny, I did get your phone call. I will reach back out to you, guys. Thank you for the call. Yeah, Leslie.
The book is on Amazon.
It is on Amazon.
It's $14 total. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, my book is coming Sunday. So if you guys order today, you can have it Sunday, and maybe we could talk about it next show. You know.
Oh yeah. I was able to get a autographed copy.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice.
Yeah. I thank Dr. Rowe for that. Yeah. So wait a minute.
Oh shoot, I'm still live.
You know, I got my granddaughter. She over.
Wait, I'm up here looking at Zoe playing on the steps. Hello. Hi.
Yeah, guys. But yeah, she's gone. She wanted me to go to the store for her. But all jokes aside, Tamika, this has been an awesome show. I'm just glad we're able, and we got to the point of getting, I mean, we always had great guests, whether they were a patient or a professional. We have great guests. Every guest that comes on here is great, but just the professional guests that we're able to bring on to disseminate or share and put out some great information is invaluable. And
exactly. Some information that a lot of nephrologists don't even want to talk about.
Exactly. They don't share. No one knows about it. And then the next thing you know, the person is on dialysis, and that maybe could have waited. You know how some people say, oh, my doctor started me on dialysis and I still have urine output. You got people on dialysis that still have urine output of maybe a liter or more.
Right, but you know what, Steve? Those are the people that come in dialysis from the emergency room. So the emergency room was like, oh, you have to go on dialysis, instead of seeing how long this was going on, like seeing how long the GFR was at that certain point.
Well, when they're at the emergency room, you know they got to give a renal consult. So they got to do a renal consult when those numbers are off the charts. They do a renal consult, and if that person needs dialysis, what they do is call a nurse on call, come in and do it. But that physician, 9 times out of 10, will come in the morning after they get a report from the doctor on the patient's condition, and from that, then they'll write the orders. They get the lab work and stuff, and they make 2 hours or 2.5 hours, remove 1 liter, 250 blood flow rate,
Mm-hmm.
and then when they come see the patient, then they try to monitor each day. The patient may be in ICU, and they monitor the numbers each day. Some patients recover, and then some move on to chronic end stage, and that's the part right there where I think it's the critical point. If for most part, they may be too late if they're at that stage, unless it's an acute episode, caused by something else.
Dehydration. Like he said, some of it comes from dehydration.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have a patient that's constantly getting off the machine to go to the bathroom.
And you know what? One question I meant to ask him, talk about, was AKI as a result from the COVID. We got to definitely bring them back to talk about that, because it's patients getting diagnosed with COVID, and it's causing AKI, and I'm wondering if that AKI would it lead to some long-term kidney damage.
Right. So, Steve, let's have a question.
Yeah, I saw that. I don't think that's extreme. I don't think a gallon is extreme, Leslie. If you do it in increments.
Right. Downing it at one time. I don't think that's good.
No, I don't think. In fact, I think you would be definitely hydrated. Absolutely. So Tamika, let me get ready to get off of here and go to the store for my granddaughter. But hey, Tamika, this is again great show. Thank you, Candy, for watching. And I got a guest next week. I'm just trying. I don't have my book to say who. Oh, I remember who it is. Next week we're going to have Tamika. You remember Artavius Veazey out of Memphis? Well, he was on Warriors Quest yesterday, co-hosting with Jared.
Go ahead.
And he's an author now.
Yes, he wrote a book.
Yeah, he wrote a book. We got all these people who have been on our show writing these books. We got to have our turn.
Let me tell you, listen to this, people. You write a book one time. That one time you write that book, you have residual. You wrote that book, and money just rolls in and rolls in and rolls in from that one time. So think about it. Tell your story, write it, and sell your story. You never know. Right?
Absolutely. But we have him on next week. He's going to talk about his book, talk about his transplant journey, and what he's been doing since the last time he's been on Urban Renal Talk with Tamika and Steve. Man, we got a lot of great shows coming up.
I want to know how he's doing with COVID.
Huh?
I want to know how he's doing with COVID. I want to know how all the patients are really doing with COVID.
Oh, absolutely.
The lasting effects of the patients that had COVID. So maybe we can find some patients that had COVID and see, how are they doing?
Oh, it's really ironic that you said that. And then we're gonna go. Leslie, we're gonna bring her back. She was in the hospital with COVID. Tanya just got out the hospital, who was on our show on Sisters Against Kidney Disease when you hosted it.
What?
Tanya Alvarez, she had COVID. She just got discharged.
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, wow. And then ways to really protect yourself.
Right. So yeah, we definitely need to put something together like that, Tamika.
Wow.
For a future show in September. She said she's 100% now. But we can talk about, bring them on the show, like what type of symptoms did they have? So maybe you could be a blessing for somebody else.
Yes.
What you done to recover, especially having a transplant and getting that. I'm sure that was really scary. We got to bring Leslie on to share that story. So Leslie, we're going to be reaching out to you because we haven't had you on since you was discharged. No, I did think I talked to her from the hospital. I did talk to you when you was in the hospital, but we need to bring you on since then. So I'm going to be reaching out to you soon.
Wow.
So you off tomorrow, Tamika?
Yes and no. I'm off from my dialysis job, but my daughter, she has the virtual school. So I'm going to help her while my 15-year-old has, just in case people like, Zoe's not in school. No, I have a 15-year-old daughter. So I'll be doing homeschool.
Oh, okay. Awesome. All right.
Interesting. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
But yes, thank you for watching.
Yes, thanks everyone for watching.
Sorry for
that. Yeah, we have some internet connections, but we're going to get it straight.
Yes, we are. We're going to get it straight. It's too many people in my house, y'all. They need to go to college. College messed up my house. I don't have no free rooms. The boys are home.
All right, that's all good. Oh, so they kind of joined from the internet.
Yeah, so my two sons, they go to college from home. So they're home. I have nowhere to do the live at. I'll be in a little corner somewhere because all the rooms are taken. And my daughter, all the rooms are taken. They just taking over the house. Don't nobody pay rent.
It's all good. I'm just glad you're able to have your family with you.
Yes, I am so thankful. And I was so patient for this. And I really thank God for change.
Right.
Get down. All right, Steve.
So, guys, share this broadcast. We love you. Thank you for watching.
Yes.
And this is just real life. This is our lives. We still have our family and personal life, but we're so passionate about what we're doing, and that's why we're on here at 10:30 at night, still trying to educate. So, thank you guys for watching, cuz
your kidneys matter. Good night.
Hey. Good night.
Wait, right? Good night, everybody.
Good night.